folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, your reluctant prophet. A happy prophet today on Labor Day, drinking beer here at the trailer. Mm. Cheers on the beautiful Gatineau River on this lovely, warm September 4th afternoon. Since it's Labor Day Monday, we're going to talk about matters regarding labor. And since I'm an old shop floor guy who worked in industry for decades, it is important for me to share my views on workers' rights, health and safety, and fair wages. Let us examine the disparity which exists between these important metrics between countries with controlled economies versus how free market economies tend to perform better to benefit the worker. It is reasonable to state that it is only under free market liberal economies that the ordinary worker emerged as a member of the middle class. This reality reflects the fallacy behind centralized social state control being viewed as preferable. So let's examine how controlled societies work in practice, and the backlash of centralized control goes far beyond how workers are being treated in the workplace and the challenges they invariably face to earn a fair wage where they can labor under safe conditions. An example of how too much state control of a society works in practice. We, the state, have noticed society is functioning well in this area without our interference. Let us create an artificial problem that no one even knew existed so that we can tell the witless, mindless citizenry that we are the only ones that can solve the very problem that no one had previously even heard about, since it didn't exist until we created it just to demonstrate how great it is to surrender your individual autonomy and traditional values to the state. And if you dare to notice this logical fallacy, this then gives the socialist collective permission to mischaracterize, marginalize, and silence you in the name of social cohesion, which equates to blind obedience to obviously contradictory rhetoric, so that the party faithful, or witless idiots, which is basically the same thing, can label you bigoted, misogynistic, homophobic, racist. Let's look at a practical example of such. Example: violence erupts in Bergen, Norway during Eritrea's War of Independence celebration. Violence erupts in Bergen, Norway during a celebration marking the start of Eritrea's War of Independence against Ethiopia. Organizers of the event clashed with counter-demonstrators, leading to a chaotic scene in central Bergen. According to reports from Bergen's Tidende, approximately 100 people were involved in the conflict. The Norwegian police operations leader, Jon Endre Skeie, thank you, revealed during a press conference on Saturday that the violence involved the use of stones, iron pipes, and other objects. Both police officers and civilians have been injured as a result of the stone throwing, while at least one person had reportedly been injured. This is immediately a contradiction in the story, of course, at least one picture. First it says both police officers and civilians were injured. Now it says at least one person had been injured. The police have not been able to confirm this. Not been able translates unwilling to. To control the situation, the Norwegian police cordoned off a street in the area and urged public to stay away. Tear gas was also used by the police to disperse the crowd. The counter-demonstrators allegedly demanded the cancellation of the planned celebration, but they promised to surrender if their requests were met. However, the police had no intention of canceling the event. This incident in Norway comes less than a month after a similar violent incident occurred at an Eritrean cultural festival in Järvafolta, Stockholm, where 50 people were injured. Similar to the festival in Stockholm, the celebration in Bergen has faced criticism for being regime friendly. Whatever the hell that means. The clashes in Bergen serve as a reminder of the ongoing tensions surrounding Eritrea's War of Independence and its aftermath. The celebration, intended to mark a significant moment in Eritrea's history, has unfortunately turned into a scene of chaos and violence. The police continue to investigate the incident and maintain order in Bergen while remaining absolutely silent about what actually went on because they can't admit that socialism fails. I've added that myself, of course, but I just love to be honest. Because if we're going to be honest, we've got to rip the scab off this stupid wound that's self-inflicted and put a little ozonol in it, you know, to aid in its healing. Here we have more examples of equality resulting in inequality and undesired outcomes. 30 years ago, if you had told Bergenites that an Eritrean uprising would happen in their little city, you would have gotten slapped in the head with a smolahuva for sounding mentally deranged. The Norwegian government, in concert with the EU, have created an artificial social nightmare that could not have existed had they just left things as they were. You can take the Eritrean out of Eritrea, but you ain't never going to take Eritrea out of the Eritrean. If, in your wildest imaginings, you tried to conceive of a culture more unlike that of Western Norway, you literally could not find one more opposing its mojo than that of Eritrea, which is why socialism inevitably results in undesired outcomes due to its constant attempt to control the uncontrollable and create problems that prior to their meddling didn't exist. Now back home to Canada, and our emerging tyranny, replete as it is, with a total hit to our civil liberties. My own government is cooperating with a murderous tyranny by sending a cabinet minister to serve on an environmental committee run by the CCP. And I begin my quote from a newspaper article on this topic. There used to be in Canada a convention that politicians didn't criticize our own country while they were visiting other countries. Primarily, this was applied to opposition parties because there would be no reason for a government MP to criticize Canada on foreign soil. But last week, Justin Trudeau's Minister of Environment and Climate Change decided to be critical of Canada twice on environmental issues while he was visiting China. Steven Guilbeault wrapped up a meeting on Thursday with the China Council for International Cooperation in Environment and Development. This is an organization founded and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party of China, but Guilbeault serves as executive vice president of the group. In the news release, CCICED AGM provided an international forum for Minister Guilbeault to advance cooperation and ambition for a number of environmental issues. End of quote. Now, given the fact China builds new coal-fired power plants on a regular basis with no regard for carbon emissions demonstrates that the committee Guilbeault serves on as vice president has nothing to do with so-called green energy. It is a ruse under which Canada cooperates with a communist tyranny to foist lies under the guise of environmental awareness. It also completely ignores the fact that Canadian industry, due to its former dedication to free markets, which Trudeau has not yet managed to erase, ranks among the cleanest in the world. And foremost among those industries is our oil and gas sector. So let's examine how AI is being used to promote state control over society, which will inevitably spell a greater loss of freedom if we do not manage to put that genie back in its box. In an interlocution with ChatGPT, I chided it for ignoring workers' rights and the disastrous damage to them in countries with controlled economies. I have traveled broadly across China visiting its industrial facilities, as well as its economic development headquarters in Hefei. I saw firsthand that in China, workers' rights and first-time quality are exceptionally wanting. This is ChatGPT's response to my chiding it. I apologize if my previous responses appeared to overlook the importance of health and safety for workers. Didn't appear to. It did. Cheers again. You know, when I was in the factory, if the man was causing issues, I told him to his face. I had the guts to stand up to him. I can tell you those stories later, but for right now, I'll go on with how ChatGPT responded. Ensuring the health and safety of workers is a fundamental concern in any economic system. No, it isn't. Communism doesn't care about it. It's true that in some free market liberal economies, there is often a greater emphasis on workplace safety due to factors such as competition, market pressures, and legal frameworks that prioritize these issues. In contrast, controlled economies where the state exerts significant control can sometimes struggle to provide adequate health and safety measures for workers, particularly in sectors where government oversight is lacking or where political considerations take precedence over worker welfare. However, it's important to emphasize that the effectiveness of health and safety measures can vary widely within both free market and controlled economies. Even in free market economies, there can be cases of inadequate worker protections, especially in industries where, with weaker regulations or limited enforcement. The relationship between economic systems and worker well-being, including health and safety, is complex and multifaceted. Factors such as government policies, labor regulations, the presence of labor unions, and social values all play crucial roles in determining the condition in which workers operate. It is also worth noting that different countries adopt a range of economic models that incorporate various degrees of market freedom and government intervention, making it difficult to make blanket statements about the performance of all free market or controlled economies regarding workers' health and safety. Remember, this isn't what I asked it. I asked it to measure how workers' rights functioned in free societies as opposed to totalitarian ones, and it refuses to address the issue. The key is to strike a balance, it says, that promotes both economic growth and the well-being of workers. Economic growth only happens under capitalism, because any economic growth that happens under socialism in any of its forms, whether it's communism or fascism, which are both socialist forms of government, inevitably are designed to benefit the state, and also inevitably only benefit those that are in league with the state. The key is to strike a balance that promotes both economic growth and well-being of workers through thoughtful policies and enforcement mechanisms. End of quote from ChatGPT. And now my closing thoughts on this Labor Day Monday. Since AI demonstrates a shocking level of willful ignorance on the tremendous advantages for workers' rights, health and safety, and the economic prosperity under free market liberal economies, where the workers and the companies that employ them have the ability to negotiate free of restrictive state control. The fact that my union can cooperatively arrive at reasonable solutions at the bargaining table in good faith, in spite of the significant challenges inherent to the collective bargaining process, is proof. In fact, socialism attempts to control life struggles, and that is in and of itself the issue, since life itself is a struggle that socialism not only never manages to mitigate, but invariably exacerbates to the point where it will create new problems which prior to state meddling did not exist. Just like at the Eritrean festival in Bergen, where a female police officer used a bullhorn to tell violent protesters to be kind to one another, as though that was offering an actual solution to the violence. Socialism is nothing other than failing to recognize human nature, but moreover, it is a detestation of it. It is a rejection of the human need and capacity to strive in order to thrive. So these are my thoughts on this Labor Day. Let competition and human innovation thrive. May the state remove its clawing hands from our ability to resolve our own issues without its help, which invariably only results in the detriment of our well-being and civil liberties anyway. The people be free. These are things to think and pray about on Labor Day. Again, I wish you a very happy Labor Day. Cheers. From this old worker who still remembers what it's like to labor on an assembly line doing unbelievably repetitive work.